Have you ever calculated how much of your life is spent staring at a glowing rectangle? The numbers might actually terrify you. On average, a person spends about a third of their waking hours consuming random content. That is over 10 years of your life gone. And while 99% of people are trapped in this endless loop of scrolling, a tiny fraction, the 1%, are building empires. Let's meet Bob. Bob represents the 99%. He has big dreams, massive goals, and a to-do list that could wrap around the moon. But right now, Bob is doing what Bob does best, watching a dog riding a skateboard on the internet while his deadline screams. His desk is a war zone of coffee cups and unread papers. The clock is ticking loudly, but Bob's brain has hit the snooze button. "I'll just do it tomorrow," Bob whispers to himself, the universal battle cry of the chronic procrastinator.
"I'll do it tomorrow."
Tomorrow is always the perfect day. But spoiler alert, when tomorrow finally arrives, it magically transforms into today, and the exact same cycle repeats itself again and again. Deep down, Bob feels a crushing wave of guilt. He knows he should be working, he wants to be productive, but he just isn't. So what is wrong with Bob? And by extension, what is wrong with most of us? Are we just genetically programmed to be lazy? Society has a very convenient answer for this. We are told that we simply lack motivation. If only we were motivated enough, right? So we try to fix it. We guzzle energy drinks and binge-watch 3 hours of intense, screaming motivational speeches at 2 a.m. We feel a massive rush of adrenaline. Yes, I am going to conquer the world. I will wake up at 5 a.m. and run a marathon. But then morning comes, the alarm rings, the motivation has completely evaporated, leaving behind nothing but a strong desire to stay in bed. Here is the uncomfortable truth that no one wants to admit. Relying on motivation is a trap. Motivation is a myth, a complete lie. Think about it. Motivation is just an emotion, and like any emotion, it is completely unreliable. It comes and goes as it pleases. One minute you are on top of the world, ready to build an empire. The next minute you are emotionally devastated because you dropped your sandwich. Relying on motivation to get things done is exactly like relying on the weather to decide if you should go to work. If it's sunny, great, but the moment it starts raining, Bob looks out the window, sighs, and crawls right back under the blankets. Let's meet Max. Max represents the 1%. At first glance, he looks just like Bob. He breathes air, he eats food. When Max wakes up and sees it raining outside, he doesn't feel motivated either. He hates the cold just as much as Bob does. His brain is begging him to stay inside. But here is the critical difference between the two, the true secret of the 1%. Max puts on his shoes and goes out into the freezing rain anyway, not because he wants to, but because he has to. This is the essence of discipline. Discipline is not a feeling, it is a system. It is a core part of your identity. Motivation says, "I will do this when I feel like it." Discipline says, "I will do this regardless of how I feel." Top 1% do not have a magical infinite supply of motivation. They have simply built a system that bypasses their feelings entirely. They treat their hardest daily habits just like brushing their teeth. You don't need a motivational video to brush your teeth, do you? You just do it. Even if you are tired, even if you are completely miserable, you do it anyway. But to understand how Max built this superpower, we need to look under the hood. We need to look inside his head. Because the battle between Bob and Max isn't a battle of willpower, it's a chemical war happening constantly inside your brain. Welcome to the control room.
The molecule is energized,
Running the show is a little
causing the
chemical
vibrant
messenger
pink
called
glow we
dopamine.
observe in the-
Most people think dopamine is the chemical of happiness or pleasure, but that is actually completely wrong. It is the chemical of desire. It is the primal monkey inside your head pointing at something and screaming, "Get that, it will keep us alive." Thousands of years ago, this mechanism was perfect. It forced our ancestors to hunt for food, seek shelter, and survive. Finding a single sweet berry required massive physical effort. Hard work equaled a tiny but crucial drop of dopamine. But today, we don't hunt mammoths. We don't forage for berries. We hunt pixels on a glowing glass screen. Enter the modern epidemic, cheap dopamine. Our world is engineered by billionaires to hijack this ancient survival mechanism. Instead of a tiny drop for a day's work, your brain is getting blasted by a fire hose of dopamine every single second. Endless scrolling, video games, junk food, adult sites, they all provide a massive chemical reward for doing absolutely zero effort. So look at it from your brain's perspective. Why would it want to spend hours doing hard, boring work like writing a report when it can just tap a piece of glass with a thumb and get an instant, massive jackpot of pleasure? From a biological standpoint, your brain isn't broken. It is actually just being highly efficient. It's optimizing for maximum reward with minimum effort. But here is the danger. This creates a terrifying new baseline. Your brain gets completely numb to normal levels of joy. Everything else suddenly feels like physical torture. Reading a book, boring. Working out, painful. Working on your goals, impossible. This is the true 99% trap. You are not inherently lazy. Your brain is just hopelessly addicted to the cheap stuff. This creates what we might call a doom loop, a vicious cycle of seeking instant gratification and feeling terrible immediately after. It goes exactly like this. You feel a tiny bit of boredom or stress. Your brain panics. It demands a quick fix. So you pick up the phone, you start scrolling, you get a massive unearned spike of cheap glowing dopamine. For a few minutes, you feel completely fine. The primitive monkey in your brain is hitting the reward button over and over again, but the spike is artificial. It doesn't last. Very quickly, those shiny pink stars turn into gray, depressing ash. And you crash. You are left with brain fog, zero energy, and a massive dose of regret. The doom loop is complete. So, how do the 1% escape this trap? How does Max manage to sit down and actually do the hard, boring work? Max understands that he can't fight his biology, so he eliminates the cheap distractions. He literally locks his phone in a drawer. At first, his brain throws a massive tantrum. It screams for dopamine. It begs for just one quick peek at social media. But Max does something incredible. He just sits there. He stares at the blank page. He actively embraces the boredom. Here is a neurosecret. Boredom is a biological trigger. Deprived of cheap stimulation, your brain gets desperate for any stimulation. Eventually, writing that report becomes the most interesting thing in the room, and as Max works, he earns real, solid dopamine. This is earned dopamine. It is the chemical reward you get after putting in actual effort, like finishing a workout or a hard task. Cheap dopamine gives you a quick spike and a massive crash. Earned dopamine gives you a steady, lasting sense of fulfillment. If you want to build the discipline of the 1%, your first mission is crystal clear. You must starve your brain of the cheap stuff. Once you cut out the cheap dopamine, you unlock the ultimate superpower of the 1%, delayed gratification. It is the rare ability to suffer just a little bit right now in exchange for a massive, life-changing reward later in the future. 99% always choose the instant reward, the donut, the video game, the extra hour of sleep. The 1% choose the pain of discipline. But wait, how does Max actually do this consistently? Does he just have superhuman, infinite willpower? Is he a robot? No. Relying on willpower is for amateurs. Willpower is like a battery. It drains throughout the day. The 1% rely on something much stronger. Look at Bob's desk. It is a literal minefield of cheap dopamine. Snacks, video game controllers, and his phone right next to his hand. He has to use extreme mental willpower every single second of the day just to not eat the donut. And eventually, he always fails. Now look at Max's environment. It is completely engineered for success. There are no snacks. The phone is in another room. Max doesn't need to use an ounce of willpower to resist the donut because the donut simply is not there. His battery stays at 100%. This brings us to the golden rule of discipline used by every successful person, the law of friction. Part 1. You must aggressively increase the friction for your bad habits. Make doing the wrong thing incredibly difficult and annoying. Delete the apps, put the TV remote in the basement, log out of all your accounts, put a padlock on the junk food cabinet. Part 2. You must completely eliminate the friction for your good habits. Make doing the right thing the easiest possible choice. Want to run in the morning? Do what Max does. Put your running shoes and workout clothes right next to your bed the night before. Remember this equation for the rest of your life. Environment always beats willpower. Design your environment and discipline becomes automatic. But environment design is only the first step. The top 1% also understand the crucial difference between goals and systems. A goal is just a wish. It is a destination. I want to write a book. I want to get fit. It looks nice, but it does nothing. A system, on the other hand, is the daily process. It is the boring factory that actually builds the destination block by block. Look at Max. He has to write a massive 500-page report. Staring at the entire project at once is completely terrifying. Bob saw this, his brain would panic, feel instantly overwhelmed, and immediately command him to open TikTok to escape the stress. But Max uses the micro-step system. He completely ignores the 500 pages. He focuses solely on writing one single easy sentence. By making the task ridiculously small, he removes the mental resistance. He tells his brain, "Relax, we are just doing this for 5 minutes." And here is the psychological magic trick. Once he writes that first sentence, he gets a tiny but real hit of earned dopamine. That tiny hit gives him the momentum to write the second sentence, then a paragraph. Action creates motivation, not the other way around. The next pillar of the 1% system is habit stacking. You take a new difficult habit and you glue it directly onto an old automatic habit. For example, immediately after I brush my teeth, I will do 10 push-ups. The toothbrushing becomes the automatic trigger for the workout. Before his brain even has time to make an excuse, he is already on the floor doing the push-ups. It bypasses motivation completely. Slowly, these micro-habits start to compound. Because the 1% focus on consistency, not intensity. Bob tries to work out for 3 hours on January 1st, completely burns himself out, and quits for the rest of the year. Max works out for 20 minutes every single day, year after year. It is not glamorous, but it is unstoppable. So, how do you apply Max's system to your own life today? It begins with step 1, the dopamine detox. You need to reset your baseline by aggressively cutting out the highest dopamine activities, delete the apps, unplug the console. For the first few days, you will feel completely awful. Your brain will scream at you. This is literal withdrawal. You simply have to survive this period. Let the brain throw its tantrum until it finally realizes the cheap dopamine is completely gone. Eventually, your baseline resets. The brain adapts to the new environment, and then a miraculous thing happens. Suddenly, ordinary things like reading a book, going for a walk, or doing your work actually feel interesting again. Phase 2, the 2-minute rule.
Step 2.
When
The
starting a new
2-minute
habit, it
rule.
must be scaled down to take less than 2 minutes to do. Do not plan to read a whole chapter. That is too much friction. Plan to read just one single page. That is it. Read one page and then stop. Close the book. You have successfully completed the habit for the day. You are mastering the art of showing up. If you want to go to the gym, your only goal is to put on your gym shoes and walk out the front door. Habit must be firmly established before it can be improved. The hardest part of any heavy task is simply crossing the starting line. Once you are in motion, physics takes over. An object in motion stays in motion. Often you will tie your shoes and decide to run anyway. Which brings us to phase 3,
Step 3,
the identity shift. The ultimate goal of the 1% is not to achieve something, but to become someone. When offered junk food, the 99% say, "I can't eat that, I am on a diet." The 1% simply say, "I don't eat junk food." One is a painful restriction, the other is a core identity. You are no longer trying to be a disciplined person, you just are. Now, there is one final massive trap that destroys 99% of people when they try to build discipline: perfectionism. We expect our progress to look like a perfectly straight line going up, but reality is a chaotic, messy scribble. Let's say Bob actually starts his new habit. He does great for 3 days, but on day 4, he slips up and eats a giant donut. What does Bob do? His brain says, "Well, you ruined the streak. You are a failure. Might as well eat the whole box and quit." The primitive monkey in his brain cheers, and Bob completely abandons his entire system over one single mistake. Here is a secret: the top 1% are not perfect. Max is not a flawless robot who never makes mistakes. There are days when Max is exhausted, his alarm goes off, and he completely sleeps through his workout. But when Max wakes up and realizes he failed, he doesn't hate himself. He doesn't throw his entire system in the trash. He simply applies the most forgiving rule in psychology: the never miss twice rule. Missing one day is an accident. Missing 2 days is the start of a new bad habit. You must protect the next day at all costs. So, Max acknowledges the mistake, forgives himself immediately, and is right back in the gym the very next morning. He doesn't try to punish himself by working out twice as hard. He just gets back to the normal baseline. A graph, one missed day, is just a tiny invisible blip on a massive upward trajectory. It mathematically does not matter. But when Bob misses a day, he lets that one blip turn into a complete downward spiral, destroying months of progress. Discipline is not about never falling down. It is entirely about how incredibly fast you can stand back up. Now we enter phase 4, The final piece of the puzzle that separates the top 1% from everyone else, the compound effect. Small, consistent actions seem completely invisible at first. They look like they are doing absolutely nothing. For the first 30 days, Max writes his 1 page a day. He looks exactly the same. His life hasn't radically changed. Bob looks at Max and laughs. Why are you working so hard for no results? Just relax and come play video games. But Max knows the secret of the hockey stick curve. He puts on his headphones, ignores the noise, and trusts the system. The compound curve stays completely flat for a very long time, and then suddenly it explodes violently upwards. Let's fast forward exactly 1 year, 365 days later, the results of the doom loop versus the system. Here is Bob. He chose the cheap dopamine every single day. The negative compound effect has completely crushed him. His room is a disaster, his goals are abandoned, and his baseline for happiness is permanently broken. He is stuck in the 99% trap. Now look at Max, he didn't do anything superhuman. He didn't use extreme willpower, he just wrote 1 page a day. But 1 page a day for a year is a completed 365-page book. He built his empire. He is fit, successful, and completely free. The massive gap between the 1% and the 99% is not created by massive heroic efforts. It is not about genetic talent. It is created by tiny, seemingly insignificant choices. Do I read a page or do I scroll? Repeated day after day after day. Time is going to pass anyway. 1 year from today, you will arrive somewhere. The destination is unavoidable. The only question you need to ask yourself right now is, what kind of system is guiding your direction? So let's do a quick recap of the ultimate 1% blueprint. How do you escape the doom loop? First, stop relying on motivation. It is a chemical scam designed to keep you trapped in mediocrity. Instead, design an environment where failing is physically harder than succeeding. Remove the friction for good habits. Step 1. Starve your brain of cheap dopamine. Detox the junk so your baseline can reset to normal. Step 2. Use the 2-minute rule. Shrink your massive, terrifying goals down into tiny, effortless micro-habits. And Step 3. Shift your identity. Forgive your mistakes instantly, but swear by the rule, never miss twice. Remember, discipline is not a punishment. It is not about torturing yourself. It is the exact opposite. Discipline is the only true path to freedom. Freedom from your worst impulses, and freedom to build the life you actually want. The next year of your life is going to pass anyway. Who will you be when it ends? If this video helped you rewire your brain, hit that like button to feed the algorithms dopamine. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss another deep dive into mastering your mind. Leave a comment below right now. What is one tiny 2-minute habit you are going to start today? Commit to it. Thank you so much for watching. Keep building your system, keep stacking those wins, and I will see you in the next one.